Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Super excited to share with you today's topic because it's all about boundaries. So often my clients or people who are looking for support in this area are seeking out specific help when it comes to setting boundaries, but more importantly, how to keep and follow through with those boundaries. There's a lot of doubt of if they feel they're doing it right. So if you relate, if you are a person that wants to have stronger boundaries in your life, I'm going to talk to you today about the 6 things that you should be doing, how to tweak them, how to improve them so that you can hold those boundaries firmly while also feeling your most authentic. You're not faking till you make it in any case, and you're keeping the things that are most important to you close to you. If you are new here, first of all, hi, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Holly Burby. I am an emotional intelligence coach, and I help people who feel stressed, overwhelmed, or misunderstood bring emotional intelligence tools to their life so that they can build their relationships and confidently change their goals to adapt with their behavior so they can confidently achieve the things that they want to while feeling self aware. So, part of emotional intelligence is our social awareness and relationship management. So, that is where the subject of boundaries falls into the category of emotional intelligence. And the beauty about emotional intelligence and your EQ, your emotional quotient, is whether you were taught it in the past or not in your life, it is something that you can learn, you can improve upon it, you can get better. So let's dive into the 6 things that you can do to improve your ability to set and keep boundaries. Tip number 1, know what boundaries are for to begin with. I think there is a misconception that a boundary is like a wall that we put up or a fence that we put up to keep people out. And first thing I'll say is if I had to choose between a wall or a fence, a boundary that you put around yourself or around the things in your life that matter to you, it's more like a chain link fence because unlike a wall or a solid picket fence, a chain link fence, you have the ability to still see through the gaps that are in the fence. You still want to be able to navigate what's on both sides of the fence, although your personal responsibility is to own your side of it. Now, when we do place that chain link fence, that boundary up in place, the second thing I want you to know in terms of what a boundary is for is boundaries are not only about keeping things out. Boundaries are really to keep the things close to you that matter the most to you. And people, again, have a misunderstanding that when we put a boundary up, we come from this place of, oh, I need to get rid of them. I need to stop giving my time to them and my attention to them. And the imagery that we create in our mind is one where we are pushing people and commitments and places away from us. What I want to introduce to you today is the concept of using a boundary to keep things close to you. So, really, that perimeter that we put up is about holding near and dear to you the things that mean the most to you. So, for example, a person who goes through a life transition, let's say they do not have kids and then suddenly they have kids. The presence of that child in their life, or even someone who has a dog or doesn't have a dog and then you have a pet, or people who have a certain relationship in their life, they're single and now they're with someone. We have something new in our life that we cherish that was not there before. And that causes us to have this moment of, okay, this is important to me. How can I make sure that my time, my energy, my attention goes toward this new thing in my life that is so important to me? And that's what we want to consider when we place a boundary is we are protecting what is close to us. Another part of that too is sometimes a boundary is simply there to protect our time because as our lives get busier and busier, we have less free time. So we get to be more strategic about who we spend our time with, what we are spending our time doing. Every minute is of more value than it was previously. So that is another thing we may be keeping close to us when we set boundaries. And another thing that you may be keeping close to yourself when you think about putting a boundary up is your emotional safety and your psychological safety. Some people in our lives just don't work with us in a way or have relationships or friendships with us in a way where we feel we can completely be ourselves with them. We may feel that they drain our energy. We may feel like we have to fake it till we make it when we're with them or whatever it looks like. Or maybe we're just around them and just giving them our emotion or our time or our energy. We walk away feeling heavier or less than we did when we went into that moment. So those are reasons why we would put boundaries up in the first place. And I wanted to, in step one here, explain to you that we are putting boundaries up to keep things close to us. So start to think about the boundary you want to enforce more readily in your life and consider, what is it I'm working to keep close to myself, instead of asking yourself the question, what am I pushing out of my life? So that's step one, is have that reframe of what boundaries are actually for. Step two in setting effective boundaries that actually work and keeping them is making sure your requests around the boundaries are specific. So, for example, we might go to people in our life and say something like, I feel emotionally drained and I'm putting up a boundary. And what I don't want is, I don't want my emotions to feel drained. What I don't want is to leave an interaction with you and feel heavier or darker or that something is inherently wrong. So that's the first mistake. In our specificity, we may tend to focus more on, this is what I don't want, instead of this is what I do want. The second way that we are not specific enough when it comes to our boundaries is we are explaining to people the type of feeling that we want to have. And a feeling that you have from people in your life that you want to set boundaries with, your feelings and your emotions are your responsibility. They don't have any direct influence where they can alter your feeling or your emotion. You do. So, what do we do in the meantime? Because clearly they're influencing our feelings and our emotions. So, what we want to do instead is you want to think of, what is the specific action or tangible thing they can do or stop doing that will help you to create for yourself an emotion or a feeling that you would rather have instead. So instead of going to someone and telling them, I want you to stop making me feel bad, you feeling bad is not their responsibility because they can't change your emotions. However, if what they are doing that is making you feel bad is, let's say they're giving you criticism in front of your kids, or they're giving you harsh criticism in front of your significant other, and you would rather have that sort of criticism or feedback in private because, one, it's not your kids or your significant other's business, and two, maybe it's really embarrassing. So a specific request would be, I'm asking of you as a boundary, can you please in the future, when you have something you'd like to give me feedback about or criticize me about, that you do this in private with no other people around us? Because when I have an audience in that moment, I feel like my privacy is violated, or I feel like it makes my kids or my spouse worry unnecessarily. So that's an example of how to take your boundary and make it specific. Say what it is you do want instead of what you don't want. And also make sure that you give them a specific action and describe it. Like I said, have a conversation alone, no people around, instead of it coming from a place of blame. You always do this and it's in front of my kids and I need you to stop it. Reframe it and consider, how can I put this in the affirmative and something they can do? Now, when it actually follows through and you do receive that criticism or feedback in private, might you still have the emotions and the frustrations that you didn't want? Yes, but that is another part of emotional intelligence. Can you navigate and regulate your own emotions? So you give them the action, something specific that they can agree to do or not do, and then you on your own are responsible for your emotions and your feelings as a result. So that is step number two in setting and keeping and following through with a great boundary. The third thing that you want to do when it comes to setting effective boundaries is communicate it in a way that the other person will understand. So, the first part of this step is to ensure that the person that you are making a request of or setting the boundary with is a person that can actually do something about it. If I have an issue with a way that you are treating me, I am not going to go to your spouse and ask them to have the conversation with you because they cannot do something about it. You can. So go to the specific person that can actually do something about it. And when it comes to expressing your request for a boundary in a certain way, understand how this person communicates. One of the things that I teach when it comes to emotional intelligence is personality styles. And every person has a different personality style. You don't need to know all the ins and outs of that just to have this conversation with them. But what you can notice is this person in a difficult conversation? Are they the type of person that's going to become recluse and shut down? Are they going to become a bully or a tyrant? Are they going to have a temper tantrum like a toddler, but they get over it really quickly? Or are they the types to start crying? And if you at least can identify that ahead of time before having the conversation, you can anticipate the kind of response that you might receive when you have this conversation. So it's important to know, how is this person typically reactive when they are, how may they respond in the moment, but accommodate their level of focus, accommodate what you do know about their personality. So some people don't like long-winded things, they just want you to get to the point. Some people are very relationship centered and their feelings get hurt very easily. So your touch when you are having this conversation may need to be a little more tender with them than it would with a person who just wants you to give you just the data, just the facts. Okay, got it. You're upset. What's the plan? Okay, let's move on. So consider their personality, consider how they typically communicate with people, and have a plan in mind where when they do, or if they do react in one of those ways, you can keep yourself centered and grounded, wait for them to have their moment, and don't respond in the same way. If they raise your voice, stay neutral and stay with it. If they start to cry, just be compassionate and empathetic, give them a moment, reassure them that you care about them, or you're doing this for the best of your relationship or your friendship or whatever it is, but cater your communication to that person. That is step number 3. You want to make sure that you are communicating your boundary in a way that they get it, and everybody is different. Step number 4 is a step that I think a lot of people miss, and that is, have in place from the jump what the consequences will be if this person doesn't follow through with the boundaries. Now, this may sound really juvenile, kind of like you're a school teacher with classroom rules, and here is the rule, and here's the consequence if you break the rule. Or this might sound like, wow, I'm going to have a conversation with an adult, but I'm going to treat them as if they are a child and tell them this is the potential consequence or the punishment. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. And here's why. Even though it may at first feel like we are disciplining a child, people who are very reactive tend to lack emotional maturity. And emotional immaturity can happen and be very prevalent with adults as well. And so, for a person who is an emotionally immature adult, a consequence does need to be put into place because they have a juvenile way of handling certain situations. So, for example, I set a boundary years ago with a family member about how often they could speak negatively to me or put me down when we were talking. So, in my specific request, I gave examples of things that had been said previously that hurt my feelings, and I also said, this is what I would like to hear from you instead, and gave examples. And I said, if we have a conversation and you approach this subject or you speak to me and use these terms again, there's the specificity, then what will happen as a result is I'm going to take 7 days and I won't be communicating with you for the next 7 days. So I'm letting you know ahead of time that will be a boundary that I will readily enforce to make sure that my emotional well-being can stay centered. And that will give me time to regulate my own emotions should you choose to say those things to me again. So sometimes it looks like time away from the person. Sometimes it looks like you ending a relationship altogether. But it's very important that you have a consequence in place where you're not going to directly punish them, but more so you need to take that space for yourself, but define it to them that this is what you will be doing should they choose to breach this boundary to begin with. So that's really important to include in your conversation when you set the boundary in the first place, because then they'll know if they cross the line, your action is not a surprise to them. They're not suddenly going to be like, what? I said one little thing and I hurt your feelings and now you're not talking to me for a week. It won't be a surprise. And if they do act like that in a reactive way and question it, you'll at least know that you were very clear in your communication with them that this is the boundary and this will be the action I will choose to take if you choose to cross this boundary. So that's very important. Step 4, have a consequence or know what action you are going to take in case they do cross the line and go against your boundary so you can follow through with it. That specificity really helps in this one too. All right, wrapping up. Number 5, keep it neutral. And by keep it neutral, I mean all of these steps should be as neutral as possible. If you find yourself that you get charged up or reactive the moment they become charged up or reactive, that is likely not going to be effective. It is going to invite more of the same reactivity from the person. So when you can present your boundary to them in the most neutral way possible, these are facts that have happened. This was the resulting thing. Therefore, here is a boundary that I'm putting in place. And should this thing happen again, this will be the action that I will take as a result of that. This is important to me to protect my relationship, my mental well being, my emotional health, my physical health. Be as factual as possible. Keep things as black and white as possible. Now, if that is not your strong suit, if communicating in a very linear way is not your strong suit, then I highly encourage you before you have a conversation with a person you are putting a boundary with, before you have that talk, find a person in your life that you trust, a good friend, a mentor, a parent, someone you really know that they are very good at being direct, and go to that person and say to them, this is a boundary I want to put down. Can you please give me some feedback on if it is specific enough? Is it neutral enough? Do you think I'm communicating it clearly? Should I be saying something less? Should I be saying more? And get the feedback from that person if you don't feel that being neutral is a strong suit. It's also a good time to practice and see as you're talking about it, do you notice yourself getting riled up? Okay, so you can start to preempt that and practice, stay centered, stay grounded. What's my intention? What am I looking to do here instead? So that is step number 5. Be neutral. Keep it as neutral as possible, as factual as possible. Leave interpretations out of it as you are developing this boundary and also when you communicate it to the person that it has to do with. And the last tip, step number 6, in addition to keeping it neutral, do not be surprised if you have to rinse and repeat this multiple times. Be prepared to repeat yourself. Be prepared to feel like you are redundant and expressing the same information to the person multiple times. This is my boundary. This is why it's important to me. This is what I'm keeping close to me. This is what I'm asking of you specifically. If you do not honor this, then I will respond in this way. And do you have any questions about that? And when they do go ahead and break through the boundary, which some may and some won't, because it just depends on the nature of the situation. If a person does choose to cross the line, again, you're going to have to repeat yourself. Now, if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, okay, wait a minute, how many times do I have to repeat myself? Because I feel like I've already said it 20 different times in 30 different ways. Well, then you have a choice to make. Because at that point, it might not be about putting boundaries in place. Sometimes it is about lessening the amount of time that you have with this person altogether in your life. It might even be about severing a relationship or severing contact to a certain degree. But know that as you are cultivating the boundary and practicing the boundary, you will likely have to repeat it. And it's really important, again, that you stay neutral and do not engage in an argument, a confrontation. Just keep it as neutral as possible and find somebody else that you can open up to about how you're reacting inside. But don't let it be that person. It will add fuel to the fire. And that, again, is ineffective. It's not that it's simple, it's not that it's easy, but these are tips that are tried and true in getting to a place where you can start to feel like, wow, I do trust myself to set a boundary and hold the person to it. I do trust myself to communicate it clearly to the person so that they understand what I'm saying and we have a better shot at it being successful and supporting us in our dynamic, in our relationship, etc. So those are the 6 tips that I have for you in terms of setting, keeping, and following through with effective boundaries. I would love to know which one of these is the step that, wow, you didn't realize you really need to work on that one. Is it being specific? Is it reframing what a boundary is for in the first place? Drop me a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for giving this video a thumbs up, clicking that subscribe button, hitting the notification bell so you don't miss another piece of emotional intelligence content that can support you in accomplishing your goals and living your most authentic life. And until next time, I'm Holly. I am your emotional intelligence coach, and continue to get out there and love always in always because being relatable matters.